Hey, everybody, we are back with Paul Craig Roberts to talk about a very important issue that has haunted the nation for the past 50 years and more, the Kennedy assassination, the assassination of the President of the United States. Who did it? Now, Trump has recently, as you know, has recently released all the files, supposedly, that were being withheld on the JFK assassination. Trump has said he doesn't see anything earth-shattering in it and believes that Lee Harvey Oswald was the assassin, but says he might have had help. Now, Paul, you've been saying this all along, that there wouldn't be anything earth-shattering in those files because either they've been deep sixed or they never existed to begin with. So explain.
Well, the CIA would never keep records of its own crimes. That would be self-indictment. I never expected them to find anything in the files for that simple reason. But the files, we don't need the files. Essentially, they're irrelevant, Larry, because we've known the truth since 2008 when James W. Douglas published this book. It was product of 30 years of research, real research, hard research. It's called JFK and the Unspeakable. And of course, it was heavily endorsed by all of the dissident historians, John Perkins, Oliver Stone, Mark Lane, Gerald McKnight. And so all of the court historians have stayed away. But here you have 30 years of research. It's conclusive. Kennedy was assassinated by a plot of the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it involved the Secret Service. It had nothing to do with Oswald. He was a total patsy.
As he said, as he said.
As
All
he
right, so
said.
Paul, the big question is why?
Why was he assassinated? Okay, it was a direct result of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the military wanted Kennedy to launch a first strike on the Soviet Union. He told them they were crazy. He complained that they were crazy to his cabinet ministers, to his brother, who was Attorney General. The military and the CIA wanted him to involve the U.S. Air Force in the Bay of Pigs to suppress the ability of Castro forces to block the invasion. He refused. The chairman of Joint Chiefs wanted him to sign off a program. The name of it, I forget now. It's all public. The documents are public. They're marked top secret, but they were all released. The chairman of Joint Chiefs wanted the president to sign off a program in which American airliners would be shot down, refugee boats from Cuba would be strafed, people would be shot down in the streets of Miami and Washington, D.C., and it would all be blamed on Castro and serve as an excuse for invasion of Cuba.
No.
And he told them they were crazy. Well, he went further. He fired a number of the CIA people, not just the director. He fired Bissell. He fired the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. He replaced or redeployed a lot of the officers who were agitating for war with the Soviet Union. It was all of them. Like, for example, George Anderson, the chief of naval operations, that is the head of the Navy. I knew him. I knew him. I had years of relationships with George. He regarded the failure of the Bay of Pigs, and he regarded the fact the president didn't strike Russia because of the Cuban Missile Crisis as a great defeat for the United States. We were humiliated. We were had. These are the words he would use. He went on about it for years. Um, Most of the top officers, the big shots, they saw this as a humiliation for the United States. We had been defeated, and Kennedy was not so much a coward as he was a Soviet agent. Stuff they pulled on Trump later. You see, they always use the same thing over and over. And they convinced themselves, particularly because Kennedy had those backdoor dealings with Khrushchev to calm the whole thing down, that he was conspiring with Khrushchev and the Soviet Union to sell out America. Now, these people believe this. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the head of the CIA, all these, they believe this. Douglas quotes them. You can read from their own words. I'm just reporting. You can see it. And so they came up with the idea they had to get rid of him because he was a traitor to America. The president had turned on America and was negotiating away our future with the Russians. And
Yeah, they felt justified in knocking off the president because he was a traitor to the U.S. We were getting into the Soviet Union, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Paul, just a review of what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. CIA trained Cuban dissidents, the way I remember it, launched an invasion, and Castro was quickly defeating them. The generals in the CIA wanted Kennedy to call in American forces to reinforce the Cuban dissidents to make the invasion of Cuba and the overthrow of Castro a success. Kennedy refused to bring in American forces directly, so that again was a sign that he was a coward and a traitor to America. And it was defeated. Castro defeated those dissidents and stayed in power. So that really ticked off the generals in the CIA.
Yeah, and in addition to them regarding Kennedy as a traitor, what they really couldn't stomach was we were defeated. We had been defeated, and this got them all worked up, all of them. It was, like I told you, George Anderson complained about it for years. This humiliating American defeat that Kennedy gave us.
And this is in the height of the Cold War, so the passions were elevated.
Yeah, the passions were high, and the Joint Chiefs, they all said, right now we have the upper hand in nuclear weapons and nuclear delivery systems, and we got to use it now before the Soviets catch up. And so they couldn't convince Kennedy. He would ask him, how can you give me assurance that no American cities will be hit with nuclear weapons? And of course, they couldn't. But so it was a long, drawn out event, this fight.
What they said was a few American cities wiped out would be an acceptable loss for the larger defeat of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, yeah. And so it is, like you say, but we add to it that their pride and their egos were involved, and their sort of involvement with the power of America, and so you can see from public records that the autopsy done of Kennedy in Dallas by doctors is totally different from the later autopsy done in Washington in the military hospital that became the official autopsy.
Yeah, okay, let's get into all the reasons why you are convinced that the evidence currently exists that is very convincing that the CIA and the Joint Chiefs are the ones that were behind it. You say there's things that are so obvious that are out there as public record if you just put it together and use logic, correct? So why don't you go through the list of what you see as convincing
Well,
evidence?
there's not time to go through all of it, but I can hit the major points. And um, one is for what reason would high-level doctors in Dallas falsify the first autopsy? They wouldn't. What did the first autopsy show? That Kennedy was hit here, not back here. What did the second autopsy show? Kennedy was here from back here. Well, that had to be done because Oswald was behind him.
Right,
Okay, so, and we have had additional evidence that they reconstructed Kennedy's skull to make it that the bullet came from back. So, and we have the public statements of doctors in Dallas who did the initial autopsy that he was hit here, and
yeah,
that the autopsy done in Washington later is fake.
right.
So they got no reason to say this. It's not been, they haven't been accused or proved of being Russian agents or anything. Uh, so um, another thing we have the tourist film, which shows that the Secret Service, alongside of Kennedy's car, which prevented a shot at him, they had two Secret Servicemen on each side trotting along by the car, and they had two on the back bumper holding on to those hand holders on the trunk, so that you really couldn't get a shot at Kennedy. In those days, the president went on an open car, so he could wave and people could see him, and so the film shows they're called off the car
Right.
just before he's shot. And the film shows one of the agents is refusing and refusing the order.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that's a Zapruder film, by the way. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And 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 then we have all the eyewitnesses who saw gunmen in front of Kennedy. From the grassy knoll. We have people who saw them. Recordings get the shots. They didn't come from behind. All of this is publicly available and has been for a long time. And then we have the fact that the weapon they say Oswald was using
Yeah.
is an old, uh,
Mannlicher Carcano, an Italian rifle.
an old military carbine, never known for any accuracy, and and with telescopic sights.
Yeah.
And it takes time to find a target with those. I use them all the time. It's not like open sights.
Right.
And we have had experiments with the best snipers in the world. They can't duplicate the number of shots attributed to Oswald in the period of time that he had. They can't duplicate them. They can't get the sight picture back. And it goes on and on. But that's enough right there. Plus, we have a lot of information showing how Oswald was cleverly set up. He apparently was on the payroll of both the CIA and the FBI. And they maneuvered him around to fit what the narrative was going to be. They had him in Mexico. They had him go to the embassy in Mexico. They're asking for a visa to Cuba. They had him doing all these things that made the record that he was some kind of a communist. And this was all done in advance. Well, uh, it's just conclusive. And we don't really need the files. We know why it happened, and I can understand why it happened because in the days of the Cold War, with aggressive statements being made on both sides, and with the Russian effort or the Soviet effort to put the missiles in Cuba, you can see how the pride of the American military and CIA was involved, and they wanted to slap all this down. They wanted to make it clear you didn't mess with America like this, and the president wouldn't do it. So that pretty much is what sealed his fate. But he did other things. You may remember he gave a speech, I think, was it at American University?
Yeah. Yeah.
In which he basically said, look, this war stuff isn't going to work for us. We got to have a path to peace. Well, of course, that infuriated the military all over again. And of course, it infuriated the military security complex that Eisenhower had just a year or two prior warned us about. You remember Eisenhower made the point in his last public address.
Right. Military industrial complex. Yeah.
Yeah, but he said, in the past, when the war was over, we demobilized.
Yeah.
This time we didn't. Why? There was a Soviet threat. And so for the first time, we are institutionalizing a military security complex that has ambitions that may not be consistent with American democracy. So, and this was a five-star general, two-term five-star general, American hero, and he says this.
Yeah.
That was in 1961.
Yeah.
Just as he's going out of office.
Yeah.
Kennedy's coming in. So all of this was highly disturbing to the American military and to the CIA, Allen Dulles, that whole crowd. And
Well, speaking of Allen Dulles, we got to bring up the Warren Commission, that dismisses everything that we've said. That's no evidence at all. Now, isn't it interesting that Dulles, who was fired by Kennedy, ends up leading the Warren Commission? And, it's one setup after another. And, the Warren Commission was like a kangaroo court against any so-called conspiracy theories. I mean, absurd. And the public absorbed it. The media went along with it. And, people like Mark Lane and other even more serious investigators were poo-pooed, as nutcases, conspiracy nuts and all that. And, as you said, the real truth has been there for so long. It's obvious. It just has to be put together in a logical form, and a logical conclusion it comes from that.
Well, it has been. This book does it. I think other books have done it, but this certainly does it. The trouble is the media doesn't make it available to the public. The book didn't get any attention from the American media. And the reason was the CIA told them everything's a conspiracy theory. So they wouldn't touch it. And also, of course, the Warren Commission did not look at any of this evidence.
Yeah.
They didn't admit any of this existed.
Didn't call key witnesses. And by the way, Jack Ruby, how obvious was that? Jack Ruby, who was a hood connected with the mafia down there, is so distraught that Mrs. Kennedy would have to testify at Oswald's trial that he had to kill him to prevent pain for Mrs. Kennedy. That was a story that was accepted.
Yeah. Now, here's what I think we can talk about briefly with a lot of reason. The fact that the true story is suppressed has led to a whole bunch of conspiracy theories. And one of them is this morning on the Unz Review. Ron Unz is interviewed by Mike Whitney. Both of these men are well-informed, very intelligent people. And Unz is explaining that Kennedy was assassinated by Israel. Now, I can briefly explain how that's not possible, and I will. But let me give you some of the reasons that Unz concludes that Israel was responsible for Kennedy's assassination. One, of course, is that Israel assassinates people all the time and always has. The Kennedy administration, one of its main goals of its foreign policy was to force international inspections on Israel's nuclear reactor at Dimona. Israel claimed it was for peaceful uses, and Kennedy said they're using this to make plutonium to make bombs, and so he was trying to force them to submit to the international inspections, and they were refusing. So he was applying a lot of pressure. A lot of it may have been secret. And these pressures became so severe that it caused the resignation of Israel's founding prime minister, Ben-Gurion. So basically, he was forced out of office by the pressures Kennedy was putting on Israel to submit to international inspection. You know, Kennedy wanted to stop any nuclear proliferation.
Right.
No more bombs, any country, anywhere. And but once Kennedy was dead, all of these efforts stopped cold. And also, while he was Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy, John's brother, he initiated a major legal effort to force the pro-Israel groups to register as foreign agents. Now, this would have reduced their power and influence because they were foreign agents. But with John Kennedy's death, this whole project stopped. So these are some of the reasons that Ron Unz concludes that Israel killed Kennedy. He was in the way of them having the nuclear weapons they needed to dominate in the Middle East.
Right.
All right. I think all of this is strictly impossible. How is Israel going to get the U.S. top command to alter an autopsy to prove the bullet came from a different direction? How are they going to do that? Is the Joint Chiefs in Israel's pocket? Are they going to follow orders? Why would Israel care which direction the bullet came from? The man's dead. If that's what they want, he's dead. Well, none of the excuses made, none of the explanations made are plausible if Israel did it. All that matters is Kennedy's dead. They don't. So why would we create a cover-up that wasn't needed? How would Israel get us to do all these things?
Well, it wasn't like we had to depend on Israel to provide the wet work, the assassin, because the CIA worked. My understanding is the CIA actually worked with the mafia for some of their wet work. So there are plenty of people available within the CIA, within our own forces, and also outside.
No,
Uh,
but the argument isn't that the CIA used Israel, it's that the CIA had nothing to do with it. Israel did it from start to finish. Israel did it because Kennedy was blocking them from having nuclear weapons.
right.
And there have been books written, and they're serious books. But the point I'm making is the way the assassination is explained makes no sense. Israel could not have arranged all of these things, and what would be the purpose? Well, how would Israel have arranged a change in an autopsy done by prominent physicians in Dallas? And why would they bother? If you look at it from that standpoint, then the Israeli thing collapses.
Mhm.
How would Israel get Oswald set up as patsy? How would Israel get Jack Ruby to go in the Dallas jail with a gun and shoot Oswald? You start looking at it, it makes no sense. It doesn't, you can't explain it this way. And moreover, Larry, there wasn't, the notion that the mafia did it. This is a CIA fed story. Don't you remember what I told you about James Jesus Angleton?
You bring that
He
up.
told me we pull off a job.
Yeah.
We already have the cover story in place, and we got a half dozen others to release, and everybody fights about which cover story is the right one. And they never get to an investigation of what really happened. And so all this mafia stuff, this was just part of the disinformation that people go on about. And another one is Oliver Stone. He wrote the book and he blamed President Johnson. Well, once again, uh, Johnson, a vice president, how does he get the Joint Chiefs, the CIA, the Secret Service to knock off the president so he can be the president? There's no way this can happen. It can't happen. He's a vice president. He got any damn power. If he started trying to get people to do something like that, somebody is going to rat on him. He's going to be arrested for trying to assassinate the president. There's
Well,
no way this could have happened.
could he have been let in on it, knowing that it was going to happen?
Not necessarily. Why let anybody in on it? They don't let people in on it. They do. They didn't need Johnson. The CIA and the Joint Chiefs and the Secret Service, they didn't need President Johnson. What the hell could he do? Uh, they did it. They had the power to do it. And they knew that, see, I don't think anybody on the Warren Commission believed the report. But they all believed, hey, if we blow the whistle on the Joint Chiefs and the CIA while we're in the middle of a war with Russia, the people are going to lose confidence in their own government. So the Warren Commission understood its job was to cover it up.
Yeah.
People could not take the truth. If they told the truth to the people, how are we going to have the Soviets as the enemy? We killed our president. Why are we trusting the Joint Chiefs to deal with the Soviets when it's the Joint Chiefs that kill the president? The CIA killed the president. So I don't believe anyone on the commission believes the report. It was just what had to be done to protect the public from the truth. They said, and I think they were right, the public could not have handled the truth. They would have lost confidence in the government in the middle of a Cold War with the Soviet Union.
And what would happen now if the public was told the truth and that was confirmed?
I think polls for years now have shown that more than half the population don't believe the Warren Commission. and that most people believe he was killed by the CIA. Now, what I don't know, and maybe this book clarifies it, I can't remember, is who had the lead, the Joint Chiefs or the CIA, and how did they get the um, Secret Service in, or at least how did they get the commander present at the motorcade? Clearly, they didn't have one of the agents in. Um, and It seems to me that right there was a weakness in the plot. I mean, what if the agents have refused? They under law, were right to refuse. They could have refused the order because they knew what the task was. And only one resisted. So I think that was the weakness. I mean, what if they had all said, no, we can't do that. That's against the rules. We're not going to break the rules.
However, Paul, there's reports that the Secret Service strong-armed the local doctors to take the body out of Dallas and fly it to Washington for their autopsy there. That the Secret Service threatened anybody trying to stop them. And that's how they spirited Kennedy's body away from Dallas, flew it to Washington, where they performed their own autopsy. And people in charge of that, people were there say they don't know who was giving orders, but they were giving orders, do this, don't do that, don't look here. So at least some of the Secret Service agents might have been taking orders since they took Kennedy's body away by force.
That's right. It was done with protest from the Dallas doctors and I think from the state coroner because the crime occurred in Texas and
Right.
it was his jurisdiction, not Washington. And if I remember correctly. So yes, you're right. They took charge of the evidence so they could alter it.
Yep.
And this is so apparent. It's not, there's no way you can deny that. That is a proven fact. So it adds to all the other proven facts that he was murdered by a conspiracy of the CIA, the Joint Chiefs, and some elements of the Secret Service. Who was leading it? I think most likely the initiative came from the Joint Chiefs and the CIA took it over because they have covert operations. They know how to kill people on the sly or get away with it, and assassinations are one of for covert operations, one of their talents. You might remember the church committee meetings in 1975.
Yeah.
Church was the senator, and the meetings were investigating the CIA's assassinations of people around the world,
Yeah.
and all the attempted assassinations of Castro. And that's when James Jesus Angleton told me how they operate.
He was a legend of the CIA, Mr.
So to sum it up, there wouldn't be anything in the documents because the CIA would not self-incriminate. We've known the story for 17 years, the publication of JFK and the Unspeakable by James W. Douglas. The documentation is tremendous. Research, 30 years, tremendous. Nothing like this was done by the Warren Commission.
Well, one last question. Why do you think Trump is releasing all the files? Now, he's already said he thinks it was Oswald, but others might have been involved. My theory is he's kind of taking out an insurance policy for his own survival by making the issue, bringing it before the public again, that maybe it was the government that knocked off at least one president, so they might lay off him with the public awareness being revived now. What do you think?
Yeah, it could be that. Um, it could also be a payback because it was the CIA who initiated the Russiagate plot.
Yeah.
You know, the who was the CIA director, John Brennan. That's where the Russiagate. So the CIA tried to assassinate him politically.
Yeah.
You know, I've made the point before. There was so much suspicion of the Kennedy assassination. They dared not do that to Nixon. Now, they wanted Nixon out just as bad as they wanted Kennedy out. Why? Because Nixon was destroying their enemies. He opened to China.
Yeah.
Remember? He opened to China. Oh my God. They were so upset. He was making all kinds of deals with the Soviets, trying to restrict nuclear weapons. You know, they had the arms reduction agreements, the SALT talks.
Right.
They had the anti-ballistic missile treaty, where nobody would try to subvert the other side's deterrent. Uh, all of this was leading to a more trust between the Soviets and the Americans, and was tending to wind down the hostilities in the Cold War. Well, that's not what the military security complex wanted. That meant their budget would be declining. It meant the power of the CIA would be declining, and they wanted Nixon out. They couldn't kill him because of all the suspicions about Oswald and John F. Kennedy. And so they used Watergate.
They took him out another way. Yeah.
They politically assassinated him. If memory serves, Woodward, remember Woodward and Bernstein, the Washington Post? Well, Woodward was sent to the Post from the CIA
That's not too suspicious, right? Nobody
to,
picked up on that.
to preside over this. And I remember I was in Washington at the time. I was in the congressional staff. And uh, I was reading the Post every day. And there'd be these long articles by Woodward and Bernstein. There would be no information in it. It was all to create a dark picture of Nixon.
Yeah.
They were in underground parking lots, deserted at midnight.
As,
Oh, we're about to be assassinated.
as depicted very dramatically in All the President's Men, the movie that
Yeah,
came from
yeah.
that.
But there's no information, but they're creating the image of Nixon as some kind of a dangerous, deadly thing and that's what they use. And that the Watergate break-in, I knew very well Liddy, you know,
Gordon Liddy, G. Gordon Liddy.
Liddy, one of the Watergate bugs. I knew very well. He was on that break-in team.
Right.
He told me that nobody knew why they were breaking in. They were given an official reason that they thought that the chairman of the Democratic National Party, his office was in there, that if they could get to his safe or his desk, or they would find evidence that the Soviets and Cuba were giving money to the Democrat National Party, and that this would help the Republicans defeat them in the re-election coming up. He said that's what they were told. And Liddy said it really didn't make any sense that somebody would keep a record like that. I mean, again, that's self-incriminating. What do you need the record for, you know? And he also said somebody on the team, when they picked the lock and went in, somebody on the team taped the lock in so when the door closed, it didn't. And so when the guards came by on their routine, the door opened. They said, "What the hell is this?" And they saw the tape on the lock. And that's how they got caught. So he said we were set up to be caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, we all knew better than to do something like that. So it had to have been done intentionally to get us caught. And that's what launched the destruction of Nixon.
Now, was Nixon in on it at all,
He
or
knew nothing about it.
knew nothing about it?
Nothing about it.
It wasn't at his direction as they portrayed.
No, no. Well, I think they finally admitted he didn't know. What they got him on was he didn't know at the time, but he did know before he admitted he knew.
Yeah.
So they got him for not telling about it as soon as he found out. And the reason he didn't was he knew the Washington Post was out to get him. And if he let that information out, it would cause him to lose the election. And so he waited till after his reelection to let it be known that there had been a break-in and by people associated with one of his staffers. I forget the guy's name now. And so, and everybody fell for that. They still believe that Nixon was some kind of a demon that did something bad. And of course, he used foul language.
Well,
And there was a 20-minute segment missing off the tapes. You know, Nixon was taping everything
yeah. Yeah.
so he could do his memoirs.
Yeah.
And there's 20 minutes missing. And so they claim that's when Nixon was first told that there'd been a break-in, and he knew then some months before he let the public know. And now, why this all constituted a crime to remove a president, I don't know.
Also about his foul language. Now, that was the first time where it became public that a president used that kind of language. I mean, there's so many presidents, I think, before and after his have used it. Now, people are in shock. But Nixon was the first one that was exposed, although he wasn't the only guilty party. So again, the power of the press, the way they shape opinion by how they report something.
Yeah, and that's why CIA sent Woodward to the Washington Post. And when I went into the Congress, I went in as staff associate to the House the House subcommittee on defense appropriations. So I had to have all these top secret clearances, which I got, and the staff of the committee, me being new and green, they said, "Look, first thing you need to know is the Washington Post is a CIA asset." And I was kind of shocked, and I wondered. I said, "Are they pulling my leg? Is this a joke they pull on you guys? What is this?" I was careful not to repeat that, thinking that I was being set up to be laughed at or we got in trouble or something, but I later sort of saw that the people who had been there a long time and been around regarded the Washington Post as a CIA asset. And I think it was the Washington Post that first employed the CIA invented term of conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, yeah. Paul, for those who still don't know your background, you were the Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. So you were in government, you learned the ins and outs, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I was, you see, I was a professor of economics, and I was sitting there wondering if what my colleagues and I taught to students about economic policy was true or just completely off balance. And I said, I think I'll go to Washington and see how they make policy. So I got a job in Washington on the congressional staff, and I was with Jack Kemp and the subcommittee on defense appropriations, and then I was chief economist of the House Budget Committee, and then I was a staff associate of the Joint Economic Committee and economic counsel to Senator Hatch. And I did all, that's where, I did all the Kemp Roth, I wrote the Kemp Roth bill, and Reagan adopted it, and they and since I had introduced it into the House and the Senate, making people aware that this was a way to deal with stagflation, they put me in the Treasury to get it out of the administration so Congress could vote on it. And all of those positions, you had to have security clearances, and I had them. Because if you were chief economist of the House Budget Committee, that was CIA's budget, the FBI's budget, all these, the NSA's budget, and we didn't get a lot of details, particularly the CIA's budget, and nobody did.
No,
Nobody.
no, not for Kennedy assassination, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then in the Treasury, of course, I had the highest security clearances because I got the president's CIA briefing every day. The Treasury had a watch room where you could go. The Soviets couldn't penetrate it to hear or do anything. And I always found most of these top secret reports not to have much in them. I mean, I always thought that the restrictions on information were excessive and inexcusable. And and then later in life, after I had left the Treasury, Reagan called me back and they put me on a secret presidential committee to investigate the validity of the CIA's opposition to Reagan's efforts to end the Cold War. Reagan, see, the whole purpose of fixing the economy, which I helped him to do, was to get America out of the melees of stagflation, to get a strong economy, and then Reagan would use the economic strength to threaten Russia with an arms race, knowing that their economy was completely broken and couldn't be fixed. And so his reasoning was, if we threaten them with an arms race, that will bring them to the negotiating table, and we'll be able to end the Cold War. He wanted to end the Cold War. Reagan hated nuclear weapons. He spoke of them as those god-awful nuclear weapons. He was very much opposed to them. He wanted to get rid of them. And you couldn't do that until you got rid of the Cold War. And but the CIA's position was, we don't want to lose our enemy.
Yeah.
Here's Kennedy taking away our enemy. Here's Nixon taking away our enemy. Now here's Reagan taking away our enemy. So they concocted this argument that, Mr. President, you might not start an arms race with the Soviets. But why? They'll win. What do you mean they'll win? Our economy's fixed now. We're moving along and they're completely broken. What are you talking about? Oh, Mr. President, you don't understand. They have a centrally planned economy. They can put the entire economy into the military. You can't do that. You put more than 5 or 6%, and the public's going to go berserk. So if you start an arms race, they'll win it because they can put more resources into it than you can. They can starve the people to death. You can't do that. Well, Reagan thought this was BS. And he had a secret committee formed, and they put me on it. And we had I guess we had about as high clearance as you could have because the CIA had to hand over to us whatever we demanded. So and not only that, but members in the CIA, including the director, if we said, show up and answer questions, they had better be there. So we went through the documents proving, according to the CIA, that we'd lose the arms race, and we got the testimony, and the report was written. We told the president, look, uh, the CIA is just protecting its budget. He said, I knew that, but I had to have a report. So I've seen it all and had the benefit of James Jesus Angleton's. I don't know why he told me that day. I have no idea why he told me all that. He had been removed. He had just been removed, but they had asked him to come testify at the church committee hearings, and he had come by Jack Kemp's office, and Jack was busy doing something and couldn't see him and sent me. And so he began by saying that they're not going to find out anything. He said the church committee, we'll tell them all about funny things about trying to give
Exploding cigars to Castro.
loading cigars and stuff, and it'll satisfy the media and make us look foolish. And they invented some story they were get on top of Castro's house and put poison gas down the chimney. I mean, it was, that's what they did do. And I mean, they did tell this kind of stuff. And it made the CIA look harmless rather than dangerous. And so, and Angleton was laughing about it. I think he was mad because they had removed him. See, he was in charge of counterintelligence, and he was convinced there was a Soviet mole in the CIA. And he was trying to find this mole. It was causing all kinds of internal disruption. The system hardly could function. So they finally said, we'd rather have the mole than Angleton. And they made him retire. And so I think he was a little pissed, and that probably convinced him that the mole was in charge of the CIA, that they took the chief of counterintelligence out and left the mole. I don't know what motivated him, but it was a highly enlightening conversation, and it's helped me understand things ever since because I see it. I see it all over. You saw it with 9/11 when the 9/11 thing started wearing out because enough physicists and experts said, no, we don't believe this. We don't believe this 9/11 narrative. They released another story that the Saudis did it. I remember that. The Saudis did it. And now we have the story the Israelis did it. And uh, who knows who will be next? It'll be the Easter Bunny or somebody.
Paul, we can go on and on with this, and we will episode, but we'll wrap it up for now, and we'll tell our viewers out there that as anything really substantial develops with the release of all these files, we'll continue this. But it's been a fascinating conversation with your days in Washington and how you came to understand the way government really works. So, Paul, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.
Well, certainly, Larry, you put on good programs, and these are things people need to know. I probably shouldn't have said everything I said, but it's been so long ago that I think the information is worn out.
You don't think they're going to be taking you to Guantanamo?
I don't. I don't think everybody involved in those things is dead. You know, and the whole world's different now. And
Well, Paul, just so you know, the viewers can't get enough of you. I'm constantly being asked, get Paul on like once a week, get him on this and that. They can't get enough of your perspective on things. I mean, with all you've experienced with government, you really do have a unique perspective, and you tell it the way it is, as opposed to most of the other commentators that we have on the air today. So, Paul, thanks once again.
well, certainly welcome. And I'm glad I'm glad your audience appreciates what you're doing. And that's a good sign. That's hopeful. And they may one day have to sign a petition in my defense.
Or mine, but
And yours too.
I'm small potatoes, but who knows? So
Yeah,
anyway,
but you see, you're in a blue state. I'm in a red one.
yeah, that's right.
You're in more danger.
You're right. And by the way, I live in what is uh, commonly regarded by police agencies, everybody, as the most corrupt county in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm doing all kinds of investigative reports on that. So I don't know how long I'll be around. We may both be seeing each other in Guantanamo. I don't know.
Well, you see, I'm surrounded by a bunch of well-armed rednecks, so I think they will be able to get down the street.
Maybe, maybe I'll move south.
They'll be stopped long before they get here.
Good luck. Paul Craig Roberts.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
So long.